Hi, I'm Erica Ruyle with Market Strategies, and today I'm going to talk to you about Stalker for Hire, how to be an engaging ethnographer no matter where you are. On a recent ethnography project that I was doing, one of my participants turned and said to me in the middle of it, what you do is a lot like stalking, only you're not as creepy. And I found this to be really humorous, but really telling about what it is as an ethnographer, what it is that we do. So I want to share some of those points with you, especially online ethnography and how we do that. So today what we're going to talk about is some various aspects of ethnography. We're going to look at a few different items. One of the things that I want to do is start off and give you a quick overview of ethnography, what it is, so we're all on the same page. Look at sort of ethnography versus lurking, what online ethnography is, how it is that you're an engaged stalker, and then this fluidity of the online versus offline, when you should use it, why you should use it, and why that's going to bring everything full circle for you with your ethnography. So if you can see this little comic here, I saw this the other day and I thought this was really appropriate in terms of stalking. In real life, when you stalk somebody, it's creepy, and that's exactly what my participant said to me. That's creepy. You're not as creepy. But when we get online, things that are not socially acceptable offline suddenly become socially acceptable. We need to make sure that when we do ethnography, it's important when we do it online that it's done with the same professionalism and vigor that it's done offline. The internet and the vast presence of online cultures is a great place to do research, and more companies are coming to recognize and tap into this resource. The problem is when we're online, we can hide behind the keyboard and monitor, and we tend to get a bit sloppy and let our guard down in terms of research and methodology. This is especially true for ethnography and what it means for online ethnography. So I want to start and just go with this broad overview of what ethnography is and where I stand on the methodology of it. I want to be sure that we're all on the same page because I hear a lot of people talk about ethnography at conferences and papers at webinars. Just so you know, I'm an academically trained anthropologist, so ethnography is something that I've worked with practically, worked with the methodological theory of, very entrenched in what ethnography is. And ethnography is a methodological practice that requires both observation and participation. There are times for lone observation, but when possible, participation is absolutely key. This is, for the most part, easily accomplished when doing field work in person. It's hard not to participate when you're standing there with somebody. We do this, and we do this so that we have a feeling of the insider's perspective, the native point of view. Simply watching someone do an activity is not the same as getting in there and doing that activity with them. Now, I recognize that it's not always possible to do what the participant is doing, but we should strive to get as close to the activity as possible and not use it as a cop-out or an excuse for doing observation only. This is especially true for online research. It's so easy just to grab conversations and go without ever having to interact or talk with people who make up that culture. Now, I want to give you an extreme example, and I do understand it's an extreme example, but it's a nice example of just why participation online in conjunction with observation is so important. Now, if you were asked to do research in this virtual world, if you can see this slide, if it's come up, what do you think is going on here by simply observing? There's a lot that's happening here, and if I were to ask you, what can you tell me about this particular online world? Could you do it by simply observing? There's a lot going on here, and it's just a snapshot of a fast-moving culture, and I would challenge you to be able to come up with a real good understanding of this culture and the people who inhabit this world by simply observing. The same goes when you're in online worlds, in online bulletin boards, community chats, forums, or watching discussions happening online. We can't assume they are just flat conversations with a what we see is what we get attitude. The ability to dive deeper gives us really thick, rich description, which is the hallmark of ethnography. It's through the voice of the participant along with the entrenched research experience that we gain great insights. And so I want to talk about this concept of ethnography versus lurkography. And lurkography is this term that I'm starting to use for what it is that people do when they do observation only and call it ethnography. A stalker is a lurker, and it's somebody who is listening and watching only. It's somebody who's using machine capture or disimpassioned observation. I want to make sure today that this is not how we view ethnography. This is more of something for today that when you think about it, lurkography, it's not that I'm saying lurking doesn't have a place in market research. It's lurking isn't ethnography. So the first step to becoming an engaged stalker means to stop lurking. A stalker lurks. An engaged stalker is someone who is a participant. So you want to de-lurk yourself. Say hello. Get involved with your community. Don't simply stand on the fringes. The rest of what we're going to talk about will give us some ways to de-lurk yourself and go from stalker to engaged stalker. Before I leave this concept of lurking or lurkography, I just want to present the simple, harsh truth. When we do online research, that is scraping, pulling conversations, and later analysis, we think we're being smart researchers. It's fast, it's cheap, and we gather a ton of data and can come up with some really interesting analysis. The entire social media movement and social media monitoring is a good example of this research. Social media monitoring is a subset of the larger social media research movement that can be done, and it absolutely has its place, but it's not ethnography. This research becomes more prevalent, and the more we use this type of research and tap into online worlds, we need to think about how the community sees us. And the truth of the matter is, they don't see us very pretty. And if you can see it, I use the example of H.P. Lovecraft's lurking fear here as a reminder that we have enough problems with distrust, and we need to be careful in this territory. We don't want to be the prime character in an online horror story when it comes to working with participants online. So let's talk about online ethnography, and let's start off with some basics. So I want to look first at what the field site of an online ethnographer looks like. And so what you have here is actually my own home working space that I use. And so this is a sneak peek into this sort of work. This type of work really requires you to think quickly, be flexible, and a great multitasker, and someone who can roll with the punches. When I do online ethnography, depending on the type of online environment I'm in, I like to have as much access to various aspects of the culture as possible. Here you can see a setup for studying a group of gamers, and on the right-hand side is the game itself. On the left-hand monitor you see a VoIP and IM that I have open for faster communication. The laptop I use for looking up stuff on forums, trying to get more information on the fly for things that I might not immediately understand. And as you're looking at this, you may say to yourself, okay, I see a lot going on here. What about notes? How are you recording this? First, everything's recorded. IMs are logged, VoIP is recorded, the game is recorded, all chat that's happening at the time is chat logged. I have all that stuff set aside for later analysis. My notes, if you can see the picture in that lower right hand side next to the mouse, is where I take my analysis. It's a pen and a notebook. It's a great case of high-tech meets tradition. So let's talk about some basics. So the basics of getting into an online community, you want to start off with the engagement, and you want to start off your engagement right. It's really important to make the first right impression, because if you don't, you can either alienate the community before you even get your foot in the door or flat out be refused entry. The first thing you want to do is get to know your community or groups of interest. This is the one and only time it's okay to lurk, at the prelim stage. Just as you would need to scout a site offline, you need to do the same online. Once the appropriate site or sites have been found, you need to gain rapport with your community. Have some side conversations. Provide them as much information as possible about your research ahead of time, and give them information related to your company. This is a great time to learn about the gatekeepers or moderators of the community. They can help you get introduced, let you know the ins and outs, and be a sounding board and a partner for you. You can expect some distrust. We often want to move in and out of these online communities fast, but some lead time can get to gain trust when you want to be in there, and when you aren't in full researcher mode can go a long way to breaking down the barriers that can sometimes be erected. You really want to invest a piece of yourself in the community. You're expecting them to be on and engaged and provide information, and you need to be just as engaged. In traditional offline fieldwork, it's physical experience as well as emotional behavior. Here online, you are removed from that physical aspect, so you need to really hit on the experience of the online community. Physical space here takes on a very different meaning, and you need to learn how to navigate that in your own research and observation. It's really important to let go. With qual work, focus groups, IDIs, we like that feeling of control, that feeling of driving the conversation and the experience. Here in the online world, you need to let that go. Things were going on, they were flowing before you got there. You slightly disrupt that flow, but you need to let it go back again to get a good feeling of the natural community. Don't try to take control. Go with the flow instead. Finally, keep in mind that the internet is always open, so expect to work some odd hours. You will learn over time that your group has its own time sinks. There's going to be heavier posting times or chances for interactions. So get to know that. Be on when those heavier times happen. You don't need to be present 24/7, but you may not be working 8 to 5. A really important aspect to keep in mind is that we often like to think of the online world versus the offline world as two separate things and that people are keeping separate lives. Well, in some way this is true. The internet gives you anonymity. It allows you to experience different aspects of yourself. People are, at the end of the day, still themselves. There's no online versus offline dichotomy. And the sooner that we realize this, the sooner we can move over that hump and just do great research. After all, why in the world would you do online research if you honestly felt that people were different online versus offline? So how exactly can you be that engaged stalker that I've been talking about? I cannot say this enough, but if you really want to get the most out of your online ethnography, you need to be engaged. Think of it in terms of going into a village, a city, or even a weekly group meetup. How strange would it be if you simply sat on the sidelines and just took notes and never said anything? You will be a curiosity for sure, but you can cut that by showing that you are engaged. You can also go beyond the community, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but it's really important to not be stuck in that one mode of communication, be it a forum or a bulletin board. Move beyond that. Just as we can communicate in a multiple variety of ways, face-to-face, in offline worlds, you can as well without ever having to be a participant there physically. It's really easy to forget that there is not a real person or that there's a real person behind the wall of words. Embrace that person, not the words. And finally, open yourself. And what do I mean when I say open yourself? What I mean is it's okay to occasionally drop that researcher mask. When you show participants that you're a person too, that you have a kid, a husband, dogs, cats, you like to ski, whatever it is that you like to do personally, they can move away from thinking in terms of sterile research environment and relax the part of the brain which screams caution when you're around. You just need to be careful that when you drop that, you aren't doing it in such a way as to influence answers. But remember, your presence there already has changed in some small way the way the community operates. In market research, we don't have the luxury of spending a long time in any one community, but we can help make our presence easier and relax people by showing them we're people as well. Now, I don't mean to imply that researchers aren't people. I'm just trying to give you a reminder to relax a bit. So you need to remember 5 things when you do online ethnography, and think of this as ethnographic yoga practice. This is the new ethnographic yoga position, and it will take practice. So first, you want to be sensitive to your context. This means not only for what you say, but understand the larger context under which you are taking the observations from. Try not to remove that one interesting bit of data without understanding the site, the members, the history, and the purpose for being there. And no matter what you do, make sure you're consistent. You are absolutely going to have to think on the fly and make decisions quickly. Don't think that because it's online, you can read and then take a day to get back to people. If you take too long, the conversation is going to move on without you, and it's going to be hard to backtrack. So you need to move quickly, and don't hesitate, but be consistent with your decisions on how you're going to handle the situations. And most importantly, we need to be aware of our reflexivity in any given group and situation. Our field notes should not only contain straight-up observation, but our own feelings and emotions at that moment. By recognizing our own internal thoughts and feelings at the time, it will help us bring about the objective research that we're striving for. And lastly, I want to look at the fluidity of online versus offline. So one big question is, why would we want to move between a group online to a group offline? What's the big deal, and why can't we just take the conversations and go analyze those? More importantly, should we or can we? And if we should and can, how do we? If you're seeing this picture, you can see what's written on his hand. It says, "People always lie." And this, of course, is an exaggeration, but it's always something to keep in the back of our minds. It's one of the reasons that ethnographic work is such an amazing methodology for market research, because through ethnography we can dig past the notion of the socially acceptable answers and get to the heart of what it is that people really think. One way that we can ensure we're gaining the truth is through the co-mix of online and offline contact. All of the previously discussed items of engagement help us deal with this issue, but this is icing on the cake. If it's at all possible to carry out, it will help push out any nagging question of truth. So when I say online to offline, I'm not talking solely about the face-to-face aspect, although that's always a bonus if you can do it. However, there are multiple formats that engage you in new ways with your participant and moves you away from that online box. Don't be afraid to engage in a number of ways. You can make phone calls, you can chat with your participants, add that real human aspect back to it. Really helps you see beyond the words. Check up on people, ask questions. You get that solidifying contact without needing to be there in person. Texts are also a great way to keep interaction, and it's typically quick and easy for people to do, and it keeps the interaction low stress. Webcams are also a great way to chat or get further information. If you're studying a use of a product or device, you can get on a webcam and combine it with VoIP or IM chat sessions and have them demonstrate in real-time thoughts, feelings, and uses of something. As an alternative, you can have them upload videos, pictures, keep online diaries. I want to emphasize, though, that these are not standalone methods for a full ethnography. Don't depend on one of these to be enough for full research. They should be used in conjunction with your larger research project or venue. So if you're studying an online community and you can get people to talk to you over webcam or do video streams, text messages, all the better to solidify that engagement and look at who it is that you're talking to. So a final word, quick note on analysis. There's no single way to approach this data once you have it. The data analysis should be taking place throughout the data collection in order to gain momentum. You want to look for patterns, connections, similarities. You want to spend time getting to know the site, get to know its meaning. Code data, use a short, concise code frame. Market research will always need to engage in this ethnographic rapid assessment, and so this can turn into long-term field work. There is no reason to cut your ties when you've done the project. If you're doing something in, for example, technology, and you're a technology company and you have a great community, there's absolutely no reason that you can't continue to pop in even when you aren't doing research, because you have a great community to tap into. You want to make sure that you triangulate all your data. Look at your field notes, your interviews, your coding, your site documents, and look for those local categories of meaning. Most importantly, what's the native point of view, and what is the meaning for the research? All of these things that I've talked about today can take you from stalker, from out of that lurkography into engaged stalker. And just a friendly reminder, I'm still stalking you. Thank you.